Okay, right. This session is session 4. Session 3 we got missed out, which was about navigation. The good news is it's about 6 slides. So what I'm going to do is finish this week's stuff and then show you last week's slides, and I'll give you the code to do your navigation. So if I give that to you, it means we can keep the same deadline, we can keep moving forward. 3 topics for today. First topic is accessibility. Okay, important topic. Relates to what we've been doing over the last few weeks, and something you need to understand, because if you get into web development, it's going to affect you legally. There are some legal requirements in terms of accessibility. We're then going to look at what we call microdata, which is how the search engine indexes and makes sense of what you put on your website. And then we're going to look at search engine optimization. What we can do, and there's actually very little we can do, to make it easier to index our websites. So accessibility. We're going to look at web standards. We're going to look at proprietary versus open standards. Now, web standards, open standards, they're not the same thing. And we're going to define accessibility. The slides are on Moodle. So if, you don't need to make lots of notes on this one, and obviously we're recording the lecture as usual. Lectures are getting online, it just takes a while to get through the process. Okay, web standards. So when you talk about web standards, some people think, oh, it means not using tables for my layout of my web page, putting things in table cells for layout. Is my code valid? Does the code validate properly? Web standard means you built your website to the recognized standard technologies. So you've used HTML5, for instance, you've used CSS, they're web standards. You're using HTML and CSS in standard ways. Your code validates, so when you put it through the validator, there's no errors in it. If you do that, you are producing web standard code, and you're adhering to web standards. So we've been doing it all along, I just haven't told you what it was called. So web standards is very, very important. Another feature of web standards is semantic HTML. And I've had more queries about what I mean by semantic HTML than anything else. Semantic HTML is all about making sure the HTML conveys the content of your page and not the design of your page. So if you were to download, say, an eBay page and strip out the style sheets, you can still understand what the page contains. You'll have Times New Roman fonts, you'll have bullet points instead of navigation, but you'll still be able to understand it. So the HTML is for the structure of your page, the content, the headings, the paragraphs, the bullets, the images that form your content. It's nothing to do with the style of your page. The style is a layer which we insert using web standards, HTML5, CSS3, using them correctly, and you've built an accessible website. That's it. I've been teaching you accessible website design and build from day one. So it should be second nature by now. The other advantage is it's search engine friendly. A properly built semantic HTML web page means the search engine can understand the structure of your page and can therefore index your pages in a better way. So they come higher up the search results, which we'll talk about later. So why do we bother? 3 reasons. Interoperability. In other words, any web browser can access any web page. That's a fundamental basis of the web, isn't it? That's why the web took off, because it used open standards. So you can use any web browser to access any page. So in other words, if you start using things like Flash in your website, you've broken interoperability because smartphones can't see it, tablets can't see it. So we stick to really clean open standards code. The second reason is accessibility. Because we use tags in a defined way that everyone uses tags will have a disability, but the actual content itself will still be understandable. The headings look like headings, the paragraphs look like paragraphs, and so on. Right, this is a frightening statistic. Over 90% of websites around the world are obsolete. They're using proprietary technology. They're using plugins which are no longer supported generally. And in fact, the latest version of Explorer has dropped support for ActiveX. So not even Microsoft support their own standards now, their own technologies. So stick to open standards and you can't go far wrong. Okay, if you have a non-standard site, you have used proprietary technologies, or you're using tags in strange ways, you've got a problem. Google will try and index your website. It will read your website, issues, they will be able to understand what's on the website. If you don't do that, you've basically, they can't see your website. And the other issue is, if you use tags in non-standard ways, you're going to have to maintain that site yourself, because all the standard content management systems and Web 2 technologies rely on standard HTML tags. You can't update, or you have to do it yourself. And all the web standards are agreed standards. The W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, which is basically is not owned by anybody, they've agreed what are web standards, and the developers use those standards. And the idea is to future-proof as much as possible, to make sure that things don't become obsolete. So this is your separation of concerns. This is the key slide for this particular topic. There are 3 components of your web page. The first component is structure. That's your XHTML, your HTML5, that's your HTML tags. The second is presentation, how it looks. That's handled by the CSS file. The third is behavior. When you roll over things, things expand, animations, transitions, those sort of things. And that's handled by JavaScript and Ajax technologies, which we'll cover later on. So you must make sure you don't blur the boundaries between these three different concerns, and make sure you keep them completely separate. So this is for those who are still struggling a bit with this one. The mandatory part of a document, the bits that without which the document would not be complete. So if you ever question as to whether it's part of content or layout, imagine taking it away. Would your page still make sense? That's the test. If you took a banner away, your page still makes sense, doesn't it? There's still the content's still there. If you took a background image away, the page still makes sense. If you took a heading 1 away, no, it doesn't make sense, does it? Because we need a heading on the page. If we're on eBay and we took the product image down, hang on, it doesn't work anymore, does it? We need that image. So if the image is required to understand the page, you need to include it. If the text is required to understand the page, you have to include it. Everything else is markup. Proprietary versus open. You can substitute the word Microsoft for proprietary most of the time. The Microsoft mantra was embrace and extinguish. The idea is they take open source technologies, they put their own spin on them and change them and try and kill off the open source version. That was their 90s and early 2000s marketing strategy. Basically, every time Microsoft gets involved in something, they try and commercialize it and try and turn it into a proprietary product. J++, they tried to take Java and produce their own version of Java. You know, it's a bit bizarre, really. But even now, it's interesting, the last year or so, something's happening with them. Internet Explorer 9 and 10 are open standards compliant. I think they've finally learned a lesson. They finally realised you can't do this. Because their market share dropped. You know, browser tech went from 98% to about 30% in the space of about 3 or 4 years, their browser market share. So, Microsoft versus open, sorry, proprietary versus open. Accessibility. I'll show you that you've watched the videos yourself. That's just extra information for you. Now, this is important stuff. If you get this wrong, you'll have the government knocking at your door, and you'll have hefty fines if you get this bit wrong. There is a legal requirement to create accessible websites. Okay, it's a legal requirement. You can be taken to court if you don't do it. Although I haven't heard of anyone being taken to court over this. But there's always that little sort of threat over your head. The idea is accessibility means it's how available is it to the population. Can anyone use it? That's all it means. Can your gran use it? Can your 3-year-old kid use it? Okay, maybe that's the exception. But basically, what we shouldn't be doing, we shouldn't be discriminating against people on the grounds of any disabilities or any impairments. Everything has to be available to all. So if it was a building, accessibility might mean putting a ramp up to the door, or putting a handrail somewhere, or having an automatic door so they can get through the doorway, or having your signs clear enough so people can read them without having to put their reading glasses on. When it comes to websites, accessible software, which is software which allows people to interact with it in a nice, easy manner, despite impairments. And unfortunately, websites are classified as software, so therefore they fall under the same rules. And this is next thing to God, I think, in terms of web developers. Tim Berners-Lee, you know him, don't you? He keeps saying things occasionally on the TV about stuff. The guy who invented the World Wide Web. Yeah, you saw a picture of his first server in the first session, didn't you? This is the man. This is the man God in terms of web development. What he says, you listen to. The power of the web is its universality. Access by everyone, regardless of disability, is an essential aspect. Or to paraphrase that, no flash. No Silverlight, you keep it simple. And technology can create barriers as well as transgress them. So technology, some people see technology as a barrier to being able to do something. We need to break those barriers down to make sure everyone has access. Done that one. Right, this is the legal side. There was something called the Disability Discrimination Act, which was seen as being a negative thing. Yeah, disability being negative. So in 2010, it was replaced by the Equality Act. And that's the law that we have to adhere to. That's the law that says banks have to have ramps up to the doors, that text has to be readable. You know the small print on your contracts and things? That's why the text got bigger a couple of years ago. Because there was a case about people, the small print, they couldn't actually read it. Some of these old people couldn't actually read the small print. It was so small. In the US, it's called Section 508. And obviously, the chances are you're going to have a site which is going to be international. And there are guidelines produced by the United Nations and the W3C, which you should be aware of. You should take a look if you become a professional developer. A person with an impairment should not be treated less favourably for a reason relating to their impairment. That's the fundamental thing. So if the impairment caused them not to be able to see your website, that's a problem. And organisations are required to make reasonable adjustments. Now, let's think what reasonable actually means. Let's imagine you've got a video sharing website and someone's blind. It's not reasonable to convert to do something with the video, is it? It's a video. However, if someone's partially has hard of hearing, it would be feasible, if the number of videos were low, to put subtitles in. But if you've got millions of videos, then it doesn't become reasonable anymore. So it's this test of reasonableness that's the fuzzy bit in the middle. If it's reasonable to do something to make it easier, you have to do it. If it's not reasonable, you don't have to. It's one of those wonderful English law legal terms, reasonableness. It doesn't mean, it means everything and nothing. So there's the assistive technology, screen readers, trackball joysticks, on-screen keyboards, screen magnifying software. A simple test, you know when you make your font bigger in your website, you know people increase the font size in the browser, does it break your website? That'd be a simple test, wouldn't it, to see if your website's accessible. If you break the font size bigger and bigger and bigger, does your website suddenly go... Emily. So we've had an issue with fragile websites this morning. Anyone come across screen readers? Anyone ever seen a screen reader, used a screen reader? It's interesting technology. I'm hoping at some point to get someone to come and show you it in work, in use. It's incredible technology. What it does, it goes through and extracts the text from the page and speaks it to the user. So they can put headphones on, it reads the text out to them. And it has microphone input. So for example, it reads the links out and the person will say, click. And it follows the link through to the next page. So if your navigation doesn't look like a navigation block, in other words, not inside nav tags, the screen reader software won't recognise it as navigation and therefore won't tell the user this is the page navigation. See how important this is? If you've got a block quote, you put it in block quote tags, so when the screen reader gets to it, it knows to treat it as a block quote. In other words, pull it in where required to improve understanding. So I've seen people use this stuff, blind people use this, and they have the speed turned up to something ridiculous. I can't understand what's being said. They're so used to it, they'll sort of turn the speed up to triple speed. and they can skim a whole web page in about a minute. So it's incredible technology, but the problem is it's linear, isn't it? It doesn't skip around the page. It goes from top to bottom. So if your main navigation is at the bottom of the page, it's got to read through the entire page content before the user can navigate away. If you put your navigation at the top of the page, they can choose the options they want without having to read the rest of the page. So it's worth exploring these. Don't forget, disabled people have lots of money. And we like lots of money, don't we? Yes? Seriously, they have spending power, and if you ignore disabled people, apart from the legal ramifications, you've got a whole chunk of your potential target audience not spending their money on your site. Yeah? So if nothing else than the purely sort of the purely sort of, opportunistic aspects of it, it's worthwhile making things accessible. Okay, so that's the kind of the spiel on accessibility and why it's important. In theory, I should be able to test any of your websites and they should be accessible because you built them with HTML5 and CSS3 and you've used sensible navigation and sensible structures. The next topic is interesting. Next topic is something called microdata. And it's amazing how many people don't know about this. If you're going to have a successful website, you need to use this technology. You have no option. So Google call this rich snippets. It's actually got another name. But what it does, it allows you to attach tags to describe the precise content of your page. So in this example, for the review, you can see that it's got a rating. Look. So the person has added some tags around to say this is a rating. This number 5, represents the rating. Then when the Google bots index the site, it extracts the data and uses that data in the search results. We've got a reviewer, look, review by, so we've got some personal data in there, the name of the person who reviewed it. If that was just in the P tag, it wouldn't make any sense to the bot, would it? We've got the date on it, look. So by adding this extra markup to your page, it means that the search engine can make sense of what it finds, and then your results will get displayed like this. Have you seen results where the person's picture comes up, the review by, and it's got the photograph of the person in the search results? I'll show you how to do that. That's using Google+. It's very simple, but very effective way of marketing. There's different formats for the tags, of course, because we're talking open standards. There's microdata, which is the preferred, which is what Google calls snippets. It's actually called microdata. So when you're searching for tags, don't just search for Google snippets, search for the microdata tags as well, because it reads all those. Microformat and RDFA. We're going to focus on microdata for obvious reasons, aren't we? Yeah, we want to get our pages up in the index, in the search results. These are the sort of things you can attach microdata to. So if your website is doing any of the above things, you should be using microdata. Reviews about people, products, businesses, recipes, events, music, video, okay? And if you're doing a review site, which you are, you're first in the list, aren't you? So you should be using microdata. So there's a typical example, right? So there's my, there's some stuff about me, okay? So it's a div tag and it's got 2 paragraphs, but at the moment the search engine bot has no idea what information is contained in there. There's lots, isn't there? There's an organisation, there's where I live, there's my name, there's my job title in there. I need to add something to that to extract that information and to tag it. So there's my revised version. It will look exactly the same on the web page, but can you see what I've done? I've used this item prop in the span. So look, I've got name, and there's my name. I've got address, which is for the address. I've got affiliation, which is who I work for. So can you see how I'm just simply adding these spans to my page, and the information's appearing? And there's my title. And then, when I search for that, I get something like this. Can you see what it's done? It's pulled out my job title, my affiliation, and put it straight in the search results. Bang, on its own line. Simply by adding a tiny bit of markup to my page. And this, when you build your markup, there's a special tool which you can feed your page to, and Google will show you what will appear in the search results when it gets indexed. And what it does, this is the tool, google.com webmasters tools rich snippets, and you point your page to this, and it pulls out every bit of information it can find about your page based on the snippets you've added. So this is a little testing tool. You can add some snippets, refresh, see what comes up, add some more snippets, and gradually make sense of what's on your web page. So if you've got a thing about videos or music, you can add the music rich snippets to it as well. So you can have a page with all the tracks saved for an album listed. So this is the extracted data. And what I want you to do is think about, when you finish your website, adding some rich snippets in, having a little go with it. Always the last session I do with you, it gives you sort of food for thought in terms of how you could take this further. If you're going to be serious about this, this is what you have to do. Okay, any questions about that? It's relatively straightforward. I'm going to talk to you about author information though. This is the bit about the photograph. To get your photograph appearing in the Google search results, you have to do two things. First of all, you have to create a link on your web page to your Google profile page. You know, your Google Plus profile. So there must be a link that goes from your web page to the Google Plus profile page. If you have the button About Us or the author or something in your footer or something, just shove it in there. It mustn't be hidden. If it's hidden, it won't display. It won't work. And then what you have to do, you have to go to this website, which is your Google Plus profile page, and add your website to the list in there. So it's a two-way process. You put a link to your profile, and from your profile you put a link to the website to prove it's you. It's a two-way process. That's what the page looks like in a pop-up, and you simply click on Add Custom Link at the bottom, and put the sort of home page of your website in there. And then when Google indexes your page, your name and your photo, your profile picture, will appear in the search results. So if you want your company's picture to appear, or your logo, you simply create a Google Plus profile for your company. You see? Then their picture appears, and you can link it all together. Search engine optimization. This used to take, years ago, about 2 or 3 weeks to teach. It's really easy now. It's so easy to do search engine optimization. The idea is the purpose of search engine optimization is still recording. Okay, just sort of wave frantically when it stops, when it's about to stop. Is the process of improving the visibility of a website in the search results. Because generally, the higher the page appears in the search results, the more chance you have of people clicking on the link and going to your web page. And have you heard of meta tags? Meta keywords equals, some of the old websites had these meta tags, and you could put special keywords for your website at the top. And the search engines used to use that to identify what it was about. It was abused so much, people don't do it anymore. In fact, if you put meta information at the top of your page, keywords, it goes down the search engine results. So do not ever, ever, ever put meta keywords in your head tag. Okay, very important. Especially if you cheat and try to use Dreamweaver, because that inserts it for you. And then what happens is you get this web crawler, which is a bot, which is basically a computer program which follows the links in your website and works out how things fit together. And that's why it's important that your navigation is very clear. And they explore the structure of your website and form a picture of how everything fits together. So if you've got a page which is not accessible through hyperlinks, it will not get indexed. So think about that for a minute. If you create a page and you haven't linked your site to it, it's never going to get indexed. It's not going to happen. So you must make sure your site structure is very logical and clear. And that's where the bullet list for your navigation comes in. Because it identifies primary navigation as being nav tags containing the bulleted list. If it's that, great, it will index it fast. If not, it will try and guess for you and sometimes get it wrong. There's only 3 things you have to think about for your search engine optimization. The site navigation, how the pages link together. Is it logically joined together and can everything be accessed through links? Internal linking, internal pages, And finally, the structure of your URL. Now, unfortunately, you're a bit stuffed with that. If you were doing a movie review site and you managed to get the domain moviereview.com, for example, you can immediately rattle up the search results. If it's mywebsite.com/reviews, it's going to be down the bottom. If it's mywebsite.com/movies, it's going to start moving its way up. So if the words people are searching for appear in the URL of the website, then it increases the visibility. If the word they're searching for appears in the domain name, it rockets up through the search results. That makes sense, doesn't it? So you can see how choosing your URL structure is important, your site navigation, how everything fits together, and make sure that everything is linked together properly. They're the only things you can do to improve your search engine optimization. That's it. Google have managed to shut all the other doors. So we've covered accessibility, we've covered a microdata, and we've also covered search engine optimization. Okay, right. So we're going to talk about web development tools. We're going to talk about creating horizontal navigation and how we create vertical navigation. Okay, that pretty much covers you, doesn't it? First thing is web development tools. There's two tools you need to be aware of. One is called Brackets, which is an editor. And the clever thing about this editor is you design your page, you can you can click on a tag and edit the CSS for individual tags, but also you can click on a little lightning bolt and it fires up Chrome and does a live preview. So as you type in, it's changing the what you see in Chrome. So it's a live preview model. The other tool is Chrome Developer Tools, which you can use to look at your margins, your padding, remember this? And you can see the page. So Brackets is cross-platform, live HTML, embedded CSS editing, and you can do JavaScript as well. So it's quite powerful, and that's what it looks like. And that's what it looks like. Here we are. So you can see I've got my HTML, but can you see I've clicked on an ahref tag? Can you see the A tag? I've clicked on I've pressed Control E for edit, and it's slid out in the panel, and I can see all the styles that apply to the A tags. And I can edit them live. And you see the results. So it's a really powerful editor which you can use. And that lightning bolt, the orange shows it's live linked to Chrome, that bolt in the top right hand corner. That is the live link indicator. Chrome Developer Tools. Okay, this is really cool. What you do is you go into Chrome and you choose Tools and Developer Tools. What it gives you is this. You can select any element on the page, see what the style sheet is, a bit like Brackets, but also if I had padding or margin, I would see the padding and margin appear in the web browser. So I can see how much padding and margin I've got around the elements. So when things go, as you build your page, it's very useful to be able to see exactly what's going on. Horizontal navigation. There's my test page. That's what my navigation should look like. In fact, it should be ULs, not OLs. So I've got my list inside the nav tag, and I've got list items. And that's what the bot expects to see when it indexes your page. That's what I want to end up with. That's sort of horizontal navigation. That's sort of the end goal. That's it. No, seriously, that's it. That's all you have to do to get horizontal navigation. Let's go through it very quickly. First of all, the critical bit is this bit here, display inline. That basically says instead of stacking one above the other, they now go side by side like they would for bold tags or something. They string horizontally. Colour white, so I can see it obviously. Margin 10 pixels, so I've got some space around my links so they look like buttons. The style on the ordered list is list style type none. That gets rid of the bullet points. That gets rid of all the bullets. I give my list a width, okay, so to fit the navigation into, and then I align its centre in the page. Does that make sense? So I've got a nice horizontal bit which floats in the middle of the page. So it looks like that. I've got to sort the margins out on that, but that's by the by. Now, the other bit of code which is useful is the links themselves. Because we've dealt with the bullets, haven't we? We've now got rid of the bullets and displayed them nicely. Let's have a look at the selectors. On my hyperlink, text decoration none means it gets rid of the underlines. But in my hover, actually, if I want to hover over and get an underline, I'd say a hover text decoration underline, which means that when you roll over the link, the underline appears. So the hover is what's called a meta selector, a pseudo selector. Color white, font family, color font family, okay? So can you see there's A and A hover. A is how the link looks before you hover over it. A hover is how the link will look when you're hovering over it. So you can change the background colours, the foreground colours, you can put underlines, you can make them bold, and you can change things as you roll over. Vertical navigation is even easier. I'm going to take this one from the start, okay? I'm going to start with my bulleted list, and I'm going to show you step by step for this one because I think it's important. If I said margin and padding 0 for everything, my bullets slide off the side of the screen. You can't see them. So I've just put margin left 30 pixels just so you can see the bullets are there. Did you notice how on the last one I said nav OLLIA, which means it only affects the links that are inside the nav tag. If I missed that out, if I just put A, it would affect all the hyperlinks on the whole page. I'm saying I want to affect the hyperlinks inside list items, inside ordered lists, which are inside the nav tag. So this style will only apply to my navigation, which means the rest of my page, my numbered list will appear fine. That's how that works. So what I've done, I've got my margin, got rid of all the margins, added a bit so you can see the bullets. I then just create a bit of a float there. So div page, background colour, width 400, margin auto, margin top. So I can see it on the page now. I can see my block. UL list style type none. That's the key. That loses those bullet points. They're gone now. Display block, width 100 pixels, background colour. Done. I've now got some vertical links. I could get rid of the underscore underlines if I wanted to. I could get some padding and margin between them. But fundamentally, it's the display attribute you need to change, which gives you the vertical or the horizontal. And the list style type. You need to get rid of that list style type. If you do that, you can build whatever navigation you want. Okay? Is that okay? Is that clear? So it's actually very, very simple. Now, your assignment is due in 7 days and 10 hours for those who are working up to the deadline. By now, you should have at least done the first 2 labs. You should have got your semantic content done, and you should have got your some style and some layouts done. Remember, it's a 4-week project. It's not a 2-month project, it's 4 weeks. I'm not expecting absolutely superb, brilliant, professional quality work. It's not, apart from a few people, it's not feasible, is it, in the time scale? I want you to do your best stab at this. Yeah? I want you to try everything out. You're going to get more marks for trying things out and it not working than not trying things out at all. So try things out and see if you can get them working. The deadline is next week. This time next week, isn't it? 5 to midnight. Tuesday, yes. 11:55 p.m. You're all capable of getting this assignment done. Okay? You've already done the majority of the work. Task 1 and 2 covers most of the work. Task 3 is simply sorting your navigation out, isn't it? And task 4 is just putting some micro tags in there and trying them out and see if they work. And so task 4 is actually very small, isn't it? So good luck with that one. When I see you next for your next lecture, we'll be talking about databases and scripting. So we're going to switch from design and build to code and build next week. Thanks very much, guys. Thank you.